Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks so much for listening in this week. Welcome to the Encouragers United podcast. I'm excited to continue the All Around Leader series. Some of you have been following along with my idea. I actually was a college track and field athlete, and because I was sort of average in almost every event, my coaches put me in an event called the decathlon. The decathlon is a 10 event track and field competition over the span of 2 days. So you do 5 events on one day and come back and run 5 events the next day. If you remember from our series, I'm going through the life lessons and the leadership lessons that I've learned from being a decathlete. And so week one, we talked about the 100 meters. That's the first event in the decathlon. Week two was the long jump, the second event in the long jump. And now we find ourselves here talking about the shot put, the first throwing event of the decathlon. It is a mean, ugly base event, right? The shot put is a 16-pound ball of steel, basically. And the throwing event is really just about pure brute explosion, right? The sprinters may have excelled in the 100, dash and the long jump, but now we all have to be confined to a 7 foot 6 inch circle. And that's not a very large space to generate power and force, if you think about it. Each competitor will have 3 attempts to move that 16-pound object as far away from that circle as possible while staying under control and leaving controlled out the back half of that circle. The shot put is a very unique throwing event because you don't actually throw the shot put at all. You put it. You see, it's so heavy that you can't actually throw it with a normal throwing motion like you would a ball or some other object. It would be far too much force on your elbow and your shoulder, and it would probably cause you to gain it, to have an injury. So you have to put it, meaning that your elbow is actually outside your hand. For those of you watching on YouTube, I'm kind of demonstrating that here. You're pushing it. It is a push throw. And so you have to use everything that you have. And I mean everything. Every fiber of your being focuses together in a sequence to come across that little circle and to put as much force into that shot put as possible in as short a period of time as you can. It's really about intensity and about impulse, right? Impulse really equals a big amount of force in a short period of time. And for purposes of our teaching and our learning about the shot put, I want you to think about the shot put as a problem or a crisis, maybe a conflict, something cold, heavy, and weighty. It has inertia, right? It's a burden, and it's a burden on you and your organization. And you have to deal with it. You have to get rid of it. And so I have 2 main life lessons that I'd like to teach you today. The first one is that we have to have intensity under control. Intensity under control. You must be able to imagine yourself as this mean, angry, uh, passionate, forceful person to be a shot putter. But you have to manage that emotion to put it all together and to stay inside that ring. Once you step inside that ring, your attempt begins. And you end your attempt, like I said, by walking out the back. And it only may take 1 or 2 seconds, but it's supposed to be 110% of all out effort for those 2 seconds. It's a discipline and a skill that's really hard to learn. For us to focus on such a short period of time with everything that we have. And, for me, it all started with my emotions. I had to get control of my emotions. And so I would often get away from everybody else when we were preparing for the shot put. I would, generally warm up and do some sprints and stretch and get going, but it was all about the mental and the spirit to be focused and to to generate that kind of intensity. It was really a very unique experience. I wouldn't throw a lot in practice and warm-ups for all the guys are over there warming up, throwing. I knew how to throw, but I needed to prepare my whole being, my mind, my body, and my spirit to explode just 3 times, because that's what each competitor in the decathlon received, was 3 chances. Most people don't even know that they have the intensity inside them that we used to create to throw the shot put. And we have to learn how to generate focus and intensity in our lives when we're facing a conflict or a problem or a burden, right? There's an intensity here that we have to muster. One great way that I learned how to do that was obviously in the weight room. Shot putters are made in the weight room. Excellence just doesn't happen, right? It's a practiced discipline to exert yourself at that high intensity for a short period of time. And we learn to discover that about ourselves in the weight room. You see, lifting heavy weights, things that make us uncomfortable because they're so heavy, right? Weight on a bar or a big rock or something else, like some people are lifting and flipping those tires. Remember, something really heavy. It makes us accustomed to that feeling of kind of fighting for your life, right? Because that's the kind of intensity that we're talking about. For me, it was the bench press, right? The bench press was actually this uncomfortable, kind of particularly difficult exercise for me. I never liked it. I was laying on my back, kind of in a vulnerable position, looking up at this heavy weight bearing down on you. And the more I put myself, though, in that position to lower that weight and then to explode up as hard as I possibly can, it made me more comfortable being uncomfortable. It made me more accustomed to focusing and pressuring myself with everything that I had to handle that heavy weight, right? And another good thing to remember is that I always had a spotter. You go to the weight room, you always have to have a partner to especially lift really heavy. They stand over you, they guide you, they give you some encouragement, some guidance, and some cheering. And they also can lift that bar so that you don't get trapped underneath it, right? And so you always have to have a spotter. And so my suggestion for you to put this into practice in your life is that in dealing with issues in your life, in your organization, you may need to practice working out a conflict or dealing with a crisis. How does your team work together as a team? How will you generate the intensity that it needs and the control of your emotions to deal with the issues that are at hand? I encourage you to talk to your coworkers, talk to someone you know, your spouse, a friend, someone to discuss your problem-solving style and to maybe identify some weaknesses that you might have, and then use them as a partner to work on those things, to set out a specific training plan, to develop the skills that you need to work on to have laser sharp focus on the intensity that it's going to take to overcome your problems. I want to tell you a story. Al Order didn't just roll out of bed and become a 4-time Olympic throwing champion, right? If you watch any videos of his interviews, Al Order states that he had to think about the long-term commitment of his life to excellence in throwing. Al estimated that he threw 10,000 discus throws every year for 45 straight years, 4 Olympiads. That's 16 years of the highest level of attainment in his event, 450,000 throws. And he admits that not one of those throws of the 450,000 that he could ever remember was perfect. Wow. You have to be intense and you have to be driven to practice that much, but you have to practice it long term. You have to put in the work and the repetitions to be great at something. Overnight successes probably took about 15 years to make them, right? Well, back to the shot put. A second factor or learning lesson that I'd like you to remember is that we have to have a tremendous amount of force that's focused in the right place, right? While I stepped into the circle, I would press that shot put right up against my cheek. I would hold it here in my neck and my cheek area, and I would push it into my face with an extreme force that actually caused me pain. It hurt my face. But that habit became part of my routine in reminding me exactly where all the force of my throw was to be directed. It's to be directed right into that shot put. You see, I absolutely hated the shot put event. You'll hear that throughout the rest of my leadership. I just didn't like it. I was an undersized person. I wasn't a big, strong guy. It was a heavy, cold, miserable ball of steel. I hated the shot put. The disdain that I and many other people have for the shot put is only a testimony as to how difficult that event really is. And success in the shot put would only happen if a person would coordinate their whole body and focus all of their emotion on one little point, the center of the ball. The center of that evil sphere was our entire focus in the throw. Often a competitor will give a yell, a vocal explosion at the moment of release of the throw. And many people question me on this through the years. Why do you guys do that? I don't understand how this intensity comes out in a yell. But the vocal explosion is actually a sign of extreme effort and focused intensity right at the instant of release. And many young throwers don't understand what maximum physical effort really feels like or what it looks like. And that yell at the moment of release is much like a follow through. It's like a finishing exclamation point to your throw. And leadership at times will face extremely heavy obstacles. You know this, I know this. We've all experienced it. I believe we've seen a tremendous disruption in our lives and the way we do business and church in just even the last 8 months, right? This health crisis, its limitations on what we can do, when we can do it, how we can do it, what we can do at all, has caused an unfortunate conflict among our families, our churches, our communities, our political parties. Everyone has an opinion about this. Nearly everyone is in conflict at some level. But this lesson that I want you to remember from the shot put is that we need to focus our energy and our force in the proper place. It's the shot put, right? If we misplace our force, we're never going to throw very well, right? If I miss the throw or I miss the center of the shot, it's just going to spin out and it won't go nearly as far as what it would had I hit the center of that throw. And if we misplace our force in work against a person or something in a troubled times, we're never going to be as effective as we would have been in our relationships or in our leadership. Remember what the problem actually is. It's not that family member. It's not the coworker. It's not your fellow leader. In our recent times, it's a virus. It's the virus that's causing this sickness and the unemployment and the homelessness or the poverty that comes along with the problems that we face. That's the problem. That's what we need to focus our effort together on, coordinating our whole intensity, our emotion, everything we have together on that one point, the problem at hand. You see, let me review. We need to generate tremendous intensity to handle the problems that we face. And maximum effort comes from everything that we have. Everything that we have control over goes into the shot put. And then we need to focus that force on the exact problem that it is. It's intensity plus focus that equals your maximum performance, both in the shot put and in dealing with problems in life. I hope this has encouraged you today. I have fond memories of throwing the shot put, and my personal best was actually not very good, but it was a wonderful experience for me to learn how to overcome on a daily basis in the weight room and out in the shot put field to overcome a problem through my intensity, my effort, and an extreme focus on what the problem really was. Thanks so much for following along today, and have a great week. It's awesome to have you join with me on the Encouragers United podcast. All the best.